All right, so remember that in our previous class, we spoke about the fact that design is built primarily on two foundations, which are elements and principles, design elements and principles. I remember that in the last class, I spoke about explaining design principles and elements using food, right? And we concluded that um, the design elements are the ingredients needed to cook the food, right? But now the principles of design are the guidelines on how to use those elements, the ingredients. So for example, let's say I'm preparing food, right? Like I said, using food now. It is the design principles that guide how much salt I add to it, when I add my seasoning, when I put in the vegetables, depending on what you're cooking, right? So that's the same thing with design principles and elements. Design elements are the visual building blocks of the design, while the principles are the guiding lines telling us how to use those design elements. Do you get that? In this class, I'll be telling you about 5 core design principles that will guide your design when you're making designs for yourself or your clients. And these principles can be found in all forms of design, be it logo design, poster design, movie poster design, photo manipulation, whatever kind of design you're doing, you'll most likely be using some, if not all of these principles. Okay, so let's jump into them. The first one is called contrast. So what is contrast? Contrast is when two elements in a design are different. And when I mean different, I mean are most likely going to be opposite of themselves, right? So what does that mean? It means, for example, if I have a white background, I will not put a white text on the background. I will put something of a darker shade to the white on the white background. Do you understand that? So if I have a black background, for example, I can put a text on it that is sky blue because it's a lighter color. So I'm contrasting between the background and the text, right? So now there are different types of contrast. There is color contrast, there is shape contrast, there is contrast in typography, and also there is contrast in scale. So all of these forms of contrast that we've mentioned help to keep the visual excitement or engagement of your design. Contrast helps to make whatever you're trying to pass across to your audience stand out in the midst of everything you're doing. Contrast can be used to place emphasis on a part of the design. Contrast is also used to break monotony and to engage your audience visually. So I'm going to show you that in practical when we get to our practical class, but I hope you get the definition for contrast. The second design principle we'll be talking about is hierarchy. Hierarchy in design means the arrangement of your design elements in a way that the most prominent message you want to pass across is seen first. It literally means the visual arrangement of things in their order of importance, from the most important to the least important. Now, for example, looking at this poster that is on your screen right now, you can see that the most important messaging is what comes out the most. And every other message that is like a supporting element to what we're saying are in smaller sizes. So that is the arrangement from the most important to the least important. Now, hierarchy does not have to be like from the top to the bottom. You could have hierarchy by having, it's just arrangement in size usually, all right? Where the most important thing is shown bolder, and then other things are arranged in smaller bits so that you guide the eyes of your reader from one element to another. And that brings us to the third design principle called alignment. Alignment means the arrangement of your visual elements according to the borders you have in a piece of work. So normally when you're designing, there are visually two extreme borders, the left and the right, but there's also the center, right? So that means we have about three types of alignments. You can either align to the left, to the right, or to the center. Now, the rule of thumb when you're designing is that you should either stick with the center alignment or at most the left alignment. People usually do not use the right alignment. And that does not mean it is not good. It's just that you have to be a bit more technical in your design to use the right alignment, right? Because most people, for one, people read from left to right, so it is easier to read like that, or center. Do you understand? So that is how you design, you use alignment. Alignment can either be left, center, or right. The next design principle we're talking about is balance. Now, balance is the equal distribution of your design elements across the design area. Now, what this means is that, let's say I have a canvas, like you can see on your screen right now. It is the balance is the arrangement of all of these design elements, the colors, the pictures, the text, the shapes, in a way that they across all board, across this design canvas, they are all, distributed equally. But in some cases, balance can be asymmetrical. Now I'll explain what that means. Now, balance has two parts to it. There is the symmetrical balance, in which the left side and the right side are the same in proportion, or the bottom and the top are the same in proportion. But we also have asymmetrical balance, which means one side of the design is carrying more weight than the other. Now I'm going to show you two examples of each. For beginners, when using balance, you should stick to the symmetrical balance so that your work looks neat and presentable. But as you begin to grow in your design career, you begin to learn the technicalities behind using asymmetrical balance. And I promise you, you can usually create very awesome designs using the asymmetrical balance. And last but not the least, in this design principle class, I'll be talking about proximity. Now, proximity is the arrangement of elements in design that are related to themselves, arranging them in the same area. Proximity by default means nearness in space to each other, right? So when you're arranging design elements, you should also take into account that you should arrange elements that are united or related in the same area. And that is why you see that in most designs where you see the flyers, the posters, things like date, venue, and time are usually together because they are related. Things like the theme and the maybe artists or ministers that are going to be in an event are usually tied together too because they are related. That is what proximity is. So that brings us to the end of this design principle class. I hope you've been able to get a thing or two. Now, I would advise you to watch this over and over again and take into account all of the examples we've made mention of. It will help you to grasp this better. See you in the next class where I introduce you to Photoshop software, telling you about what you can do on the software, and also moving to the practical classes. See ya.